All right, so ready to jump into another deep dive.
Always excited to explore some new ideas.
Awesome. And today we're all about, well, cracking the code of the entrepreneurial mindset.
Sounds intriguing.
Right. Our guide for this is Kevin Johnson's The Entrepreneur Mind.
Oh, I've heard good things about that one.
Yeah, it's not your typical business book, you know?
What makes it different?
Well, Johnson pulls from both his own journey and experiences of a ton of other successful leaders to give us like the inside scoop.
Like a behind-the-scenes look at what makes these entrepreneurs tick.
Exactly.
I bet our listeners are eager to hear about that.
Yeah, I'm betting they're looking for those practical nuggets they can actually use.
Oh, aha moments.
Totally. Whether they're launching their own thing or just want to understand how those business masterminds think.
Yeah, makes sense. It's always fascinating to see what sets those high achievers apart.
Right. And one thing that really grabbed me early in the book was this idea of thinking big.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Yeah. Okay, so Johnson argues that failing isn't just about like your business closing. It's about not reaching its full potential.
So not just shutting down, but not hitting those big goals you might have set.
Yeah, and it really resonated with me because I often find myself setting these small achievable goals, you know?
I can see how that would be tempting. Less risk of disappointment, maybe?
Maybe, but maybe that's actually holding me back from like truly groundbreaking ideas.
Makes you wonder if playing it safe keeps us from reaching our full potential.
Exactly.
And that kind of leads into this idea of the blue ocean, right?
Yes, the blue ocean concept,
Which is all about finding those uncharted market spaces.
where the competition is, well, a little less fierce.
Right. Instead of jumping into a pool with, well, a bunch of sharks, you find your own nice, calm pond.
Such a great analogy. And Johnson actually started his first company, a college web portal.
Back then, that was pretty unique.
Totally. He
Yeah.
basically created his own little pond.
So smart. Instead of battling it out in a crowded market.
Yeah, so it's about identifying a need that no one else is meeting, right?
Absolutely. Finding those gaps in the market.
But how do you actually like find these blue oceans?
That's the million-dollar question.
It feels kind of like searching for buried treasure.
It is a process of exploration, for sure.
Yeah.
Johnson really emphasizes deep market research.
Makes sense. Understanding the trends, the gaps.
Exactly. And spotting those unmet needs,
Yeah.
or those underserved customer segments.
The ones that the bigger players might be overlooking.
Exactly. Thinking outside the box is key,
It's like being a trendsetter.
rather than a trend follower.
Yes. And that reminds me of something else Johnson talks about, working on the business.
Not in it.
Not in it, yeah. It's something I personally struggle with, always getting bogged down in the day-to-day grind,
It's so easy to get caught up in that whirlwind.
isn't it?
It is. And Johnson really highlights that trap for entrepreneurs.
The ones seeking freedom, but who end up, well, shackled to their businesses.
Right. Doing everything themselves.
Yeah, which is the opposite of freedom. So what's the key to breaking free?
Johnson stresses building systems. Systems that can operate, well, without your constant intervention.
Okay, so like automating tasks and delegating effectively.
Exactly. Freeing up your time and energy for the bigger picture.
Which is the whole point of working on the business, not in it.
Right. Focusing on strategy, growth, and, well, enjoying that entrepreneurial freedom.
Easier said than done, though, right?
Oh, for sure. But Johnson offers some really practical tips.
Like what?
Well, one key is to identify your strengths and weaknesses.
Okay, so figure out what you're truly great at.
Exactly. And what you can, well, delegate or outsource.
So you're saying the first step is self-awareness.
Absolutely. Know yourself, know your business, then start documenting your processes.
So someone else can replicate them.
Yes. Then you gradually hand off those responsibilities.
And trust your team to handle them.
Exactly. It's a process, but it's worth it.
It does make a lot of sense. Okay, so we've talked about thinking big, finding blue oceans, and working on the business. But there's another interesting concept Johnson brings up. Stressful urgency.
Stressful urgency. That sounds a bit counterintuitive.
It does, doesn't it? It sounds like something to avoid.
Most advice is about reducing stress.
Right. But he argues that a certain level of stress and time pressure can actually boost performance and creativity.
Interesting. So, like, healthy dose of pressure.
Yeah, exactly. He even talks about this demanding NASA program he did.
Really? What was that like?
Well, it pushed him and his peers to their absolute limits, but it ultimately prepared them for what came next.
So like a trial by fire.
Kind of. It makes me wonder if there's a sweet spot for stress.
There probably is. Too much and you burn out, but too little and you get complacent.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance, that edge.
Where you're motivated but not overwhelmed.
Like a controlled burn, to prevent a forest fire.
I like that analogy.
Using stress strategically to clear out the underbrush, so to speak.
And make space for new growth. But how do you create that stressful urgency without, well, becoming a tyrant?
That's the key question. It's not about creating a hostile environment.
Right, it has to be healthy.
Exactly. It's about setting ambitious goals.
And having clear deadlines.
Yeah, and fostering a culture of accountability.
Where everyone's pulling their weight and striving for excellence.
Yes, but also with open communication.
Making sure people feel comfortable voicing concern.
Yeah, exactly. So it's about setting the bar high, but also providing support.
The resources, the guidance, the encouragement to help everyone reach that bar.
Absolutely. Speaking of support, Johnson also stresses the importance of asking for help and overcoming, well, that entrepreneurial ego that makes us think we have to do everything ourselves.
It's a common struggle, especially for driven individuals.
Totally. It feels like admitting weakness sometimes.
Right. But Johnson shares how he had to learn to ask for help early on.
And how it actually benefited his company's growth.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that you don't have to have all the answers.
It's about leveraging the expertise of others.
And gaining those different perspectives, which you can't achieve alone.
Right. It's like having a seasoned navigator on board.
Guiding you through those uncharted waters.
Yeah.
Avoiding those hidden reefs.
Exactly. Makes a lot of sense. But then Johnson throws in this curveball. Sometimes you have to prioritize the business over family.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Isn't it? Bound to stir up some controversy.
It's a provocative statement for sure.
It is. But he uses this analogy of putting on your own oxygen mask first on an airplane.
You can't help others if you're gasping for air yourself.
Right. He's not saying neglect your family.
But sometimes those tough decisions have to be made.
Prioritizing the business for its survival.
Which ultimately benefits everyone.
Yeah, it's like a triage situation, Sometimes you have to focus on the most critical needs first.
Makes sense. Focus on what's essential for the long-term well-being of everyone involved.
Right. And along those lines, he also talks about being resourceful, especially when it comes to finances.
The ever-present financial challenge for entrepreneurs.
Right. But he debunks this myth that you need, like, a ton of money to start a business.
Highlighting the value of bootstrapping.
Yes. He actually has this great story about bartering advertising in his magazine for movie premiere passes.
Wait, really? And then what?
And then he leveraged those passes to get free radio promotion.
That's brilliant.
Isn't it? Talk about scrappy.
Pure entrepreneurial ingenuity.
It really showcases that entrepreneurial spirit.
Making the most of what you have. Being creative.
And he also emphasizes being smart about finances from the start.
Managing cash flow.
Yep, and paying taxes quarterly to avoid those nasty surprises.
He learned that lesson the hard way, didn't he?
He did. Something about a bad check.
Oh, right. He talks about accepting a bad check and how that taught him.
To verify funds and manage risk.
It highlights the need to be savvy,
To protect yourself.
Even when you're in that exciting phase of building your business.
Exactly. So due diligence and a little healthy paranoia are key.
Absolutely. Protect yourself and your business.
Once you've got the finances somewhat figured out, building a strong team seems crucial.
Couldn't agree more. A strong team can make or break a business.
Right. And Johnson emphasizes hiring people who will, challenge you.
Not just nod along with every idea.
Exactly. Not just yes men.
He criticizes that tendency,
Yeah.
to surround yourself with people who just agree with you.
Right. And he highlights the need for constructive criticism, diverse perspectives. He even uses Michael Jordan as an example.
Oh, how so?
Well, suggesting that his struggles as the owner of the Charlotte Bobcats,
Yeah, I remember that.
might have been partly because of a lack of dissenting voices.
Interesting. So even the greatest basketball player of all time needs a team that's willing to call him out on a bad play.
It makes you realize that a good team isn't just about talent.
It's about the right mix of personalities.
Yeah, people who can work together, challenge each other. And that leads us to a crucial element for any business sales.
Can't have a business without sales.
Right. And Johnson argues that every entrepreneur is in sales, whether they realize it or not.
I think that's true for a lot of professions, actually.
Probably.
Yeah.
He actually made his first accidental sale.
What do you mean by accidental?
Well, he sold a banner ad on his college website, which sparked his entire entrepreneurial journey.
Wow. Talk about a serendipitous moment.
It is, right. And it's a powerful reminder that selling starts from the very beginning, even before you have, a fully formed business.
It's about that entrepreneurial spirit.
Exactly. And it's not just about pushing your product,
Right. It's about understanding your customers' needs.
finding solutions for them,
And Johnson really stresses the importance of constant learning
especially when it comes to sales and customer service.
because the market is always evolving, right?
Always. So being a successful entrepreneur means being a lifelong student.
Always honing your skills, adapting to change.
It makes me wonder, is there a specific learning style that works best for entrepreneurs?
That's a good question. Johnson actually challenges that traditional notion of education.
Oh, interesting. In what way?
Well, he stresses that real learning often happens um, outside the classroom.
So not necessarily in a formal setting.
Right. He even shares his decision not to attend Harvard Business School.
Wow, that takes guts.
It does. He chose to focus on running his business and learning through experience.
So it's not about rejecting education altogether.
Not at all. It's about recognizing that there are multiple paths to knowledge.
Finding what works for you and constantly seeking out those new experiences.
Being a knowledge explorer, charting your own course.
I love that, but it can also be pretty overwhelming, right?
Oh, yeah. There's so much to learn, so many directions you can go.
Exactly, and that's where Johnson's advice on embracing failure comes in.
Ah, yes. He has this great anecdote about crashing a Porsche on a racetrack.
Okay, now I have to hear this story.
We'll have to save that for the next part of our deep dive.
Oh, come on. You can't just leave me hanging like that.
But first, I want to hear your thoughts. What stood out to you so far? What resonates with you?
Ooh, that's a great question. There's so much to unpack already. I think what really hit home for me is,
Welcome back. Eager to hear your thoughts on what we've covered so far.
oh, definitely, lots to process. But first, you have to tell me that Porsche story.
Ah, yes, the Porsche. Well, Johnson was at this high-performance driving school, pushing a Porsche to its limits on a racetrack.
Okay, I'm already on the edge of my seat.
He talks about that fear he felt as he approached a curve too fast, the adrenaline rush, as he corrected the skid,
Sounds intense.
and that realization that even when you think you're in control, things can go wrong fast.
I can see how that relates to running a business.
Right. Those unexpected twists and turns.
Exactly, and you have to be able to, think on your feet and adapt quickly.
Exactly. Make those split-second decisions. He compares those moments of panic and recovery to the challenges entrepreneurs face.
The financial setbacks, the competition, those times when you have to pivot your strategy
Exactly. It's about learning to embrace those moments of uncertainty.
and use them to your advantage. So it's not about avoiding risk.
Not at all. It's about managing it.
Using it as fuel for growth. It makes me think of those entrepreneurs who thrive in chaos.
The ones who aren't afraid to take risks,
Yeah.
make bold moves.
Yes. They seem to have this innate ability to navigate uncertainty.
It's a fascinating trait. And Johnson explores this further when he talks about having an enemy in business.
Enemy. I've always thought of competition as something to be wary of, not something to actively seek out.
It might sound strange, but Johnson argues that having a competitor can really fuel your drive, give you a common goal to rally around.
So it's about channeling that competitive spirit
Exactly. Using it as motivation. Think of it like a friendly rivalry.
that pushes you to be your best. I can see how that could work. It's like having a worthy opponent in a game.
Exactly. It raises the stakes, makes you play harder.
But isn't there a risk of becoming too obsessed with the competition and losing sight of your own goals?
That's a valid concern, but Johnson emphasizes focusing on your own vision, not getting sidetracked by what your competitors are doing.
So it's about using the competition as a benchmark, a motivator.
But not letting it dictate your strategy.
Right. Finding that balance between healthy competition and staying true to your own path.
Exactly. It's about running your own race.
Hmm.
And speaking of staying true to yourself, Johnson also has this interesting take on competition, or the lack thereof.
What do you mean?
He challenges this notion that having no competition means you have a great idea.
Oh, interesting. I would have thought that was a good thing.
He actually sees it as a red flag.
Really? Why is that?
Well, he argues that in a free market, every business has competition, even if it's not immediately obvious.
So if you truly can't identify any competitors, it might signal a lack of demand.
Potentially. It could mean you're venturing into a market that, well, doesn't quite exist yet.
Which is risky. So it's better to be in a crowded market where you have to fight for your share than in a deserted market where no one is interested.
Exactly. It's a reminder to really do your research, understand the competitive landscape before you dive in head first.
Makes sense. Don't jump into the deep end without knowing how to swim.
Exactly. But even when you've done your research and you're confident in your idea, things will inevitably go wrong.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. Things never go exactly according to plan.
Right. And Johnson stresses the importance of putting out fires quickly.
Damage control.
Exactly. He shares a story about a web hosting issue. It caused a major problem for one of his clients.
I bet that was stressful. Technology can be such a headache sometimes.
It definitely sounds like it was.
Hmm.
But Johnson emphasizes taking swift action, communicating clearly with your clients.
Transparency is key.
Absolutely. And even offering concessions when necessary to regain their trust.
So it's not just about fixing the problem.
It's about how you handle the situation, how you communicate,
It can have a lasting impact.
on your reputation, on your relationships.
Exactly. Okay, so we've talked about embracing uncertainty, finding your competitive edge, and dealing with those inevitable fires. But Johnson also has some interesting thoughts on education.
Oh, yes.
Hmm.
He has this rather provocative statement. School is not necessarily education.
Is he advocating for dropping out of college?
Not necessarily. He acknowledges the value of a formal education, but
But he believes there's more to it than just the classroom.
exactly. He stresses that true learning extends beyond the classroom walls.
Learning by doing, through experience.
Right. He talks about his own experience feeling stifled by traditional academia and how he learned far more through his entrepreneurial ventures.
So it's not about rejecting education altogether.
Not at all. It's about recognizing those multiple paths to knowledge.
Finding what works for you, being open to learning from a variety of sources.
Exactly. And he emphasizes continuous learning throughout your career,
Hmm.
especially in today's rapidly changing world.
The only constant is change, right? If you're not constantly adapting and expanding your knowledge base, you'll fall behind.
Exactly. And Johnson also challenges another common assumption that you need a fancy office space to be successful.
I've always thought of like a nice office as a status symbol, a sign that you've made it.
It's tempting to think that way. But Johnson shares how he actually made the mistake of renting a lavish office space early on, thinking it would impress clients.
Did it work?
He found it actually had the opposite effect. It increased his expenses and hurt his company culture.
Oh, wow. So it backfired.
It did. His team had always been more, relaxed and flexible.
So it's not about the outward appearance.
It's about creating an environment where your team can thrive.
That makes sense. But I'm curious about this idea of unique traits and habits of entrepreneurs. Does Johnson think there's like a specific personality type that's predisposed to success?
He dives into this fascinating topic, talking about learning disabilities.
Learning disabilities.
Yeah, like dyslexia and ADHD. He argues that these perceived weaknesses can actually be strengths in the entrepreneurial world.
So what might be seen as a disadvantage in one context could be a superpower in another.
Exactly. It's about reframing those differences.
I like that. Turning perceived weaknesses into strengths.
Right. For example, someone with ADHD might have a harder time focusing in a traditional classroom.
But that same energy could be channeled into creative problem solving.
Exactly. Or a relentless drive to get things done.
It makes you realize there's no one-size-fits-all mold for an entrepreneur.
Right. It's about embracing your unique strengths.
Finding ways to leverage them. But building a successful business also requires building a strong team, and finding the right people can be tough.
Oh, absolutely. Hiring is one of the biggest challenges for entrepreneurs.
It is. And Johnson stresses the importance of constantly recruiting, even when your team is already successful.
Always be on the lookout for talent.
He compares it to college basketball coaches. They're always scouting for new players, even when they have a winning team.
Makes sense. Never stop looking for ways to improve your team.
Exactly. But once you've assembled your team, how do you effectively manage them, motivate them?
Johnson emphasizes the importance of managing expectations, not people.
Interesting. What does that mean?
Well, he argues that conflict often arises from misaligned expectations.
So being clear about what you expect from your team from the start.
Exactly. He shares this anecdote about a graphic designer who was constantly delivering work late.
Oh, I've been there.
Right. It's frustrating. But instead of getting angry, Johnson realized that he needed to clearly communicate his expectations.
And the consequences of not meeting them.
Exactly. Setting clear boundaries, making sure everyone's on the same page.
But what about those situations where conflict does arise, despite, everyone's best efforts? How do you navigate those tricky conversations?
Johnson emphasizes addressing conflicts directly, finding solutions that work for everyone.
So, open communication is key.
Absolutely. Active listening, empathy, a willingness to compromise.
Seeing conflict as an opportunity for growth.
Exactly. Not a sign of failure. And speaking of growth, let's talk about sales and networking.
Okay, those are two areas where I could definitely use some tips.
Well, you might find Johnson's views on networking a bit surprising.
How so?
He actually hates those traditional networking events.
Really? Why?
He finds them, well, full of self-serving individuals.
Those people who are more interested in promoting themselves than building genuine connections.
Exactly. And I think we've all been to those events where it feels like everyone's just trying to collect business cards.
Yeah, it can feel very transactional. So if Johnson's not a fan of those traditional events, what does he recommend?
He advocates for a more creative and service-oriented approach to networking.
Okay, I like that. What does that look like in practice?
Well, he encourages asking questions like, what's the best type of customer for your business? Or, how can I help you find clients within my network?
So it's about focusing on how you can provide value to others, not just what you can get from them.
Exactly. It's about building those genuine relationships based on mutual benefit.
I like that. Shifting the focus from taking to giving, building those win-win relationships.
Precisely. He even shares an example of how he leveraged his connections with a nonprofit organization to gain access to executives at major financial institutions.
Wow, that's clever. So he found a way to connect with them on a deeper level.
Exactly. He realized that these executives were often involved in philanthropic activities, so they were more receptive to meeting with someone who was connected to a cause they cared about.
That's brilliant. It's about finding those unexpected points of connection and leveraging them to build relationships.
Exactly. Yeah. Thinking outside the box. And Johnson also has some valuable insights on cold calling. He argues that you should never make a truly cold call.
Okay, so what's the secret to warming up those cold calls?
Preparation. Researching your prospect beforehand. Finding ways to personalize your approach.
So showing that you've done your homework.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That you're not just blindly dialing numbers, that you're genuinely interested in their business.
And how you can help them. That makes sense. But even when you've done your research and, crafted the perfect pitch, you're bound to encounter objections. How do you overcome those?
Johnson emphasizes the importance of asking the right questions to uncover the true reasons behind a prospect's hesitation.
So digging deeper, getting to the root of their concerns.
Exactly. He suggests that customers often only reveal about 20% of what's on their minds, and it's your job to uncover that other 80%.
By asking those probing questions and listening carefully, it's like being a detective.
Right, piecing together the clues.
To understand their needs and motivations. But once you understand their needs, how do you effectively communicate the value of your product or service? How do you convince them that it's worth their investment?
Johnson offers a somewhat counterintuitive piece of advice.
Oh, I'm intrigued. What is it?
He says, tell everyone about your business.
Really? He's not worried about competitors stealing his ideas.
He actually encourages entrepreneurs to share their vision.
That's bold. Why does he advocate for that?
He argues that the benefits of sharing your ideas outweigh the risks. It can generate excitement, attract potential investors, and even help you, refine your ideas based on feedback.
So it's about embracing transparency, using it to your advantage.
Exactly. And when it comes to pricing strategy, Johnson suggests that sometimes it's better to say no to potential clients.
No to clients. Isn't the goal to get as many clients as possible?
Well, he believes that it's better to say no to clients who aren't willing to pay your worth.
So knowing your value, not undervaluing your services.
Exactly. He shares a story from his early days as a musician.
Okay, I'm listening.
He and his band decided to set a high price for their services and stick to it, even if it meant turning down gigs. They realized that by positioning themselves as a premium act, they would attract clients who valued quality.
Clients who are willing to pay for it. Makes sense. It's like that saying, price is what you pay, value is what you get.
Exactly. And Johnson also emphasizes not holding grudges.
Not holding grudges, even when someone, rejects your offer.
He believes it's better to let go of that anger.
Focus on building relationships with people who do see the value in what you offer.
Exactly. Don't waste energy on negativity. Focus on those who appreciate your work.
That's a great mindset, but I imagine it can be tough when you're facing rejection after rejection. How do you maintain that entrepreneurial drive, especially when it feels like you're hitting a wall?
That's where Johnson's analogy of entrepreneurship to racing a Porsche comes full circle.
Ah, yes. Back to the racetrack.
He talks about the need for superhuman endurance, the ability to push through those moments of doubt and exhaustion.
Just like a race car driver pushing their car to its limits.
Exactly. Having a clear vision,
Yeah.
a strong support system, and an unwavering belief in yourself.
Embracing the challenges, learning from the setbacks, never giving up on your dreams.
Beautifully said. And Johnson actually shares some inspiring historical examples of successful entrepreneurs who weren't afraid to break the rules.
Oh, like who?
Well, he talks about Bill Gates hacking into a computer system as a teenager,
Wow, really? I didn't know that about Bill Gates.
and Steve Jobs and Sergey Brin pushing boundaries, challenging authority.
It's a reminder that sometimes you have to be a little rebellious, a little disruptive to make a real impact. You can't always play by the rules if you want to change the game.
I love that. Thinking differently,
Yeah.
challenging the status quo. And when you're on that journey of disrupting the status quo, it's important to have a trusted partner or advisor by your side.
Someone to bounce ideas off of, to offer support and guidance.
Exactly. Johnson talks about the importance of having a sidekick, someone who can offer, different perspective. He compares it to the 4 by 100-meter relay in track and field.
Where a team of athletes can achieve far more together than any one individual could alone.
Precisely. It's about finding that person who
Yeah.
who complements your strengths and weaknesses, someone who can, challenge you and push you to be your best.
Makes sense. Having that support system is crucial, but building a successful business often comes with personal sacrifices.
That's true. And Johnson doesn't shy away from that
That
reality.
she doesn't sugarcoat it.
He shares an anecdote about a friend who got divorced because his entrepreneurial drive conflicted with his family life.
Wow. That's a stark reminder that success often comes at a price.
It does. It makes you really evaluate your priorities, what you're willing to sacrifice.
It's a tough balance. But even when you're, willing to make those sacrifices, it's still important to find some
Yeah.
balance between your personal life and your entrepreneurial ambitions.
Absolutely. And Johnson acknowledges those challenges. He shares a funny story about how his wife sometimes feels like he's abusing his flexibility.
Because he doesn't have the same time constraints as someone with a traditional 9-to-5 job.
Exactly. It's a common struggle. Those lines between work and personal life can get blurred.
It's important to set boundaries, make time for yourself and the people you care about.
Absolutely. And Johnson also talks about recognizing that even as an entrepreneur, you're not always the best person to close a deal.
Sometimes you need to bring in someone else to make the pitch.
He shares this rather amusing anecdote about trying to sell advertising in his magazine to a local business owner.
Okay, what happened?
Well, the business owner was more interested in meeting his attractive female colleague than discussing the ad.
Oh, wow. Talk about a distraction.
It is, right, a lighthearted example, but it highlights the importance of recognizing your own limitations, being willing to let someone else, take the lead when necessary.
It's about being strategic, recognizing that you don't have to do everything yourself. Sometimes the best approach is to delegate or collaborate with others who have different strengths.
Exactly. Teamwork makes the dream work. But even when you have a great team and a solid strategy, there's still going to be times when you feel like giving up.
Those moments of doubt, when the challenges feel insurmountable.
Exactly. And Johnson talks about the need for that superhuman endurance, but he also acknowledges the importance of self-care.
Taking breaks, recharging.
Exactly. Finding ways to renew your energy, having a strong support system, surrounding yourself with positive people, and finding those outlets for stress relief.
Like exercise, meditation, spending time in nature.
Exactly. It's a marathon, not a sprint,
You have to pace yourself, take care of your well-being,
mentally and physically.
and find ways to stay motivated for the long haul. And speaking of motivation, Johnson also challenges the traditional definition of success.
He argues that it's not just about money and fame
It's about finding fulfillment.
and making a positive impact on the world.
He even criticizes Drake's song Successful, which focuses on material possessions and outward validation.
Right. It's about defining success on your own terms.
Not letting society dictate your values or your goals. Finding that sense of purpose and meaning.
Exactly. And he highlights Oprah Winfrey as a great example of someone who has, redefined success.
In what way?
Well, he talks about how she found renewed meaning and validation when she discovered that her great-great-grandfather had built a school for African American children.
Wow, that's incredible. Connecting to her heritage, finding inspiration in her family history.
Right. And it shows that inspiration can come from unexpected places,
Yeah.
and that connecting with your heritage can provide a profound sense of purpose.
That's a powerful message. But what about those who come from backgrounds where entrepreneurship isn't the norm? How do you overcome those societal or cultural barriers?
Johnson acknowledges those unique challenges: the lack of access to capital, mentorship, networks. He stresses the importance of resilience, determination, and finding mentors who believe in your vision.
Regardless of your background, breaking down those barriers, paving the way for future generations.
Exactly. Showing that anyone can achieve their dreams.
With hard work, dedication, and a little bit of luck. But what about those who are just, starting out? What advice does Johnson have for aspiring entrepreneurs?
He offers a range of practical tips, from validating your idea to building a team to securing funding. But perhaps his most important piece of advice is this: don't be afraid to fail.
He sees failure as a necessary part of the process.
He argues it's an inevitable part of the journey, and that it's through our failures that we learn and grow the most.
Embracing those setbacks, seeing them as opportunities for growth.
Exactly. And he encourages entrepreneurs to surround themselves with people who support their vision,
Mentors, advisors, friends, family.
people who can offer guidance and encouragement, and celebrate those small wins along the way.
Because entrepreneurship is a marathon, not a sprint. You need those moments of joy, those reminders of why you started in the first place.
Exactly. And speaking of finding joy, Johnson also stresses pursuing your passions, both inside and outside of your business.
Makes sense. You have to love what you do.
He shares a story about Oprah Winfrey discovering that her great-great-grandfather was an entrepreneur.
Really? I didn't know that about Oprah.
He built a school for African American children. It was a powerful moment for her, connecting her to her heritage and the impact that entrepreneurship can have.
It's a reminder that our passions and our purpose can be intertwined with our family history, our cultural heritage.
Or even just a random discovery that sparks a fire within us. It's about staying curious, exploring those different avenues, being open to those unexpected sources of inspiration.
I love that. So it's not just about building a business, it's about finding your purpose, your
Yeah.
passion.
Exactly. And Johnson also talks about the importance of surrounding yourself with people who inspire you.
Both personally and professionally.
He believes that the people we spend our time with have a profound impact on our mindset, our outlook.
They say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Exactly. And he encourages entrepreneurs to seek out mentors and advisors and peers who challenge them, support them, and inspire them to be their best selves.
It's like building your own personal board of directors, a team of people you trust and admire.
Exactly. People who can offer guidance and feedback and accountability. And when it comes to building a team for your business, Johnson emphasizes hiring people who are smarter than you.
Surrounding yourself with people who can push you to grow.
He believes that it will help you learn and become a better leader. He encourages entrepreneurs to delegate effectively, empower their team members, and create a culture of collaboration and innovation.
It's about recognizing that you don't have all the answers.
And that the best ideas often come from unexpected sources.
Yeah.
It's about building a team that's greater than the sum of its parts.
A team that can achieve things that you could never accomplish on your own. That makes sense. But when it comes to leading that team, Johnson has a rather unique perspective on being your own boss.
He argues that it's actually quite misleading. He believes that as an entrepreneur, your true boss is the customer.
So you're ultimately accountable to the people you serve.
Exactly. He talks about how businesses that ignore customer needs are destined to fail.
Have to adapt.
They have to listen to feedback and put the customer at the center of everything.
It's about shifting your mindset from I'm the boss to I'm here to serve.
Exactly. Building a business that's not just profitable, but also makes a positive impact.
On the lives of your customers. And as we wrap up this part of our deep dive into the entrepreneur mind, I think Johnson's message is clear. Entrepreneurship is a journey, not a destination.
It's about embracing the challenges, celebrating those victories, and constantly learning and growing along the way.
It's about finding your passion,
Yeah.
building a supportive community, and making a meaningful contribution to the world.
Beautifully said. And as we move into our final part, I'm curious to hear what's resonating with you. What insights or advice have sparked your curiosity,
Yeah.
inspired you to think differently?
Honestly, it's that whole idea of the enemy in business that's really stuck with me.
Oh, yeah. I could see why that would be thought-provoking.
It is. Makes you rethink how you view competition. Like maybe it's not always a bad thing.
Right. Johnson definitely flips the script on that one. Instead of shying away from competition, he encourages us to embrace it.
To use it as fuel.
Exactly. Like finding a worthy rival can push you to be even better, to innovate, and to really step up your game.
It's almost like having a training partner, someone who challenges you and helps you reach your full potential.
I like that analogy. Someone to keep you on your toes. But it's important to remember, like you said earlier, to keep your focus on your own goals and not get too caught up in what your competitors are doing.
Right, right. Stay true to your vision. But, while we're talking about competition, there's another piece of advice from Johnson that I found really intriguing.
Let's hear it.
He says that sometimes it's actually a red flag if you can't identify any competitors.
Oh, interesting. That seems counterintuitive, right? You'd think having no competition would be a good thing.
Exactly. Less people to fight with for market share. But Johnson argues that if you truly can't find any competitors, it might mean there's no real demand for your product or service.
So it's like you've stumbled into a ghost town. There's no one there to buy what you're selling.
Yeah, exactly. A bit of a lonely and potentially unprofitable place to be.
Makes you rethink that whole build it and they will come mentality. Sometimes you need to make sure there's actually an audience out there before you build it.
Absolutely. Do your market research. Understand your target customer and make sure there's a need for what you're offering.
Wise words. And speaking of wise words, I know we touched on this earlier, but Johnson also has some interesting thoughts on the whole school versus education debate.
Yeah, he's definitely not a fan of the traditional education system,
Right.
but I wouldn't say he's anti-education either.
Right. It's more nuanced than that. He acknowledges the value of a formal education, but stresses that true learning often happens outside of the classroom.
Through real-world experiences, trying things out, failing, and learning from those mistakes.
Exactly. He talks about how he actually learned more from his entrepreneurial ventures than he did from any textbook.
And he even chose to skip out on Harvard Business School to focus on building his business. That's a pretty bold move.
It is. But it speaks to his belief in the power of experiential learning. And to be fair, he's not alone in that thinking. There are plenty of successful entrepreneurs who didn't follow the traditional educational path.
Yeah, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. I think what Johnson is really emphasizing is the importance of continuous learning, right? Being a lifelong student.
Absolutely. Staying curious, adapting to new information and technologies, and constantly seeking out ways to expand your knowledge and skill set.
And in today's rapidly changing world, that's more important than ever. If you're not constantly learning and evolving, you'll quickly fall behind.
Truth. It's like that Red Queen's race in Alice in Wonderland,
Mhm.
where you have to keep running just to stay in the same place. The world is moving fast, and we have to keep pace.
So we've talked about embracing competition, rethinking education, and the importance of continuous learning. But there's another piece of advice from Johnson that I found particularly relevant, especially for someone like me who, loves the idea of working from anywhere.
Okay, what's that?
He actually challenges the notion that you need a fancy office space to be successful.
He's all about that remote work life.
Pretty much. He even shares how he made the mistake early on of renting this lavish office space, thinking it would impress clients and boost productivity.
How'd that work out for him?
Well, it kind of backfired. It increased his expenses and actually hurt his company culture.
Interesting. So sometimes those outward signs of success can actually be a distraction from what really matters.
Right. It's not about the fancy office. It's about the people, the work, and the impact you're making.
And about creating a work environment where your team can truly thrive.
Exactly. And speaking of teams, Johnson also dives into this fascinating topic of the unique traits and habits of entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I remember this section. He even talks about how some perceived weaknesses can actually be strengths in the entrepreneurial world.
Like learning disabilities, for example.
Yeah.
He argues that things like dyslexia or ADHD, which might be viewed as disadvantages in traditional settings, can actually be superpowers for entrepreneurs.
That's so interesting. It's like those traits that might make it harder to conform to traditional systems can actually be assets when you're forging your own path.
Exactly. It's about embracing those differences, reframing them, and finding ways to leverage them to your advantage.
Love that perspective. It's about recognizing that there's no one right way to be an entrepreneur. There are many paths to success, and it's about finding the one that works best for you and your unique strengths.
Absolutely. And I think that's a perfect note to end on. We've covered so much ground in this deep dive into the entrepreneur mind, from the importance of thinking big and embracing competition to the power of continuous learning and building a strong team.
And we've explored some really thought-provoking ideas about redefining success, finding your purpose, and embracing the challenges and triumphs of the entrepreneurial journey.
It's been an inspiring and insightful conversation, and I hope our listeners have walked away with some valuable takeaways that they can apply to their own lives and businesses.
Me too. It's a reminder that entrepreneurship is more than just a career path. It's a mindset, a way of approaching the world with creativity, resilience, and a passion for making a difference.
So, to all our listeners out there, whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or just starting to explore the world of business, remember to embrace your unique strengths, stay curious, and never stop learning and growing.
And don't be afraid to take risks, to challenge the status quo, and to chase those big, audacious dreams. The world needs your ideas, your passion, and your entrepreneurial spirit.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this incredible deep dive. Until next time, keep those entrepreneurial minds engaged and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.